will find that the most common size for a filament dryer is a 1 spool size, like this one that we have here. But recently there's been like a new wave of 2 spools filament dryers coming up, and now there is even a 4 spool filament dryer in the market coming from Sunlu. I thought it was time to get them head to head and see what's happening between these big filament dryers, what's good, what's bad about them, and show you what can we get out of them so you can choose which one works for you the best. So I have with me 3 filament dryers. I have the Sunlu S4, I have the Eibos Polyphemus, and I have the Fixdry NT2 Duo. And we're gonna check the 3 of them in 5 different categories to see which one can work for you the best. Let's start talking about the functionalities for these dryers. Drying is the main work that they have to do, right? And today it's very uncommon to find a filament dryer that doesn't get up to 70 degrees and can dry filaments like nylon, for example. The good thing is that the 3 filament dryers that I have chosen here, the Sunlu, the Eibos, and the Fixdry, can reach that temperature without any problem and basically do that part of the job like similarly without a big differences. But even if they use the same principle to warm up and to dry the filaments, there is a small difference about how they do this work. You see, the basic principle of drying the filament in these kind of boxes is that they have a heating element in the middle or on the bottom, together with some fans that move the hot air around the chamber that normally is enclosed and doesn't let the air go out, and this hot air keeps drying the filament until you reach the temperature that you want. The 3 filament dryers that I have here today does this work very similar. They have a heating element in the center, they have fans pushing that air around, and they have some way to move or to throw that air around. But then, if you think about how this method works, you could see that the closer the roll, the closer the spool is to that heating element in the bottom or the center of the dryer is, that section is going to get warm up more than the other one that is at the edge of the box or at the edge of that roll. Of course, you can think that these boxes are designed so you can fit your printer at the same time that you're drying the filament, and if that's the case, then you will be rotating the spool together with the heating part of it. But what happens if you are not rotating the spool? What happens when you have decided that you want to dry 4 or 5 hours before your filament, so you are ready to do that work that you want to do in the future? In this case, the filament rolls are going to stay there, and you can have that problem that I was mentioning before, one area heating more than the other one. And if by any mistake or any bad luck that heat is too high, you can have problems like, for example, melting the filament in that section and then ruining your spool. That's why the Eibos Polyphemus had added a feature where you can rotate that spool even if you are not printing. They have some small motors inside that is keeping the filament rolling all the time, or actually not all the time, but it moves time to time, so you can change that section that is closer to the heating element all the time. That feature is not found either on the NT2 or the Sunlu S4. The 3 boxes uses the same idea, having rods inside, using bearings that allows that filament roll to freely roll inside without adding friction to the movement when you are printing at the same time that you are drying. One feature that is pretty cool from both the Sunlu S4 and the Eibos Polyphemus is that even after you have dried your filament and you are not actively heating the chamber anymore, you can set both of these dryer boxes to keep certain level of humidity inside. This will allow you, for example, to dry your filaments for many hours and then take a pause, take a rest, and say to the box, keep my filament at a certain level, 23 or whatever humidity percentage you want, and then the box is going to be turning on and off all the time, taking care that that level, that humidity inside the box doesn't go over the threshold that you selected. This is something to keep the filament dry even if you're not actively heating the whole chamber all the time. So you save energy, but you keep that filament in a nice way so you can go and print whenever you want, whenever you're ready to do the printing work. The Fixdry doesn't have any features similar to this, which makes it a bit simpler in that sense. Both Sunlu and Eibos does this job very well, having a second mode. One call it like M2 and the other one just have a 1 or 2 on a section, meaning that you're going to keep working in this way. The Sunlu S4 and the Eibos Polyphemus has space where you can add silica gel to help the process of drying that filament. Especially when you are not actively heating the chamber, you can have these extra silica bags in there to just help keep the humidity level inside the box in the correct level. Something that I'm still noticing is the fact that if you look at the Eibos box and the Fixdry box, both of them has a way for the humidity to escape the chamber. The Fixdry has some fixed holes on the top of the lid, and the Eibos box has a lid that you can open and close depending on what you're doing to allow that humidity to go out. But the Sunlu S4 doesn't have any of this. You can say that you have the holes where the filament exit, and you can open those holes, you can keep them open and kind of help the humidity to leave the chamber when it happens. But I still think that that might not be enough. I'm not 100% sure. I've seen some reviews where the humidity inside gets so high that you see water drops on the wall of the filament. That hasn't happened to me particularly, but I know that it can happen, and it was kind of the same mistake that happened for Sunlu with the S2, where a lot of people recommended just to keep the lid a bit open so that humidity could escape. I'm not so sure why, if that was feedback that was given to Sunlu on the S2, they still didn't do anything about it with the S4, which is such a big and such a nice machine. If you think about it, both the Fixdry and the Eibos box have 2 spools of capacity. But there is a small difference because the Eibos box can add an extra hat, if you want to call it like that, to the lid, so you can put some spools that are bigger than the regular 1 kilo spool, maybe like a 3 kilo spool. So that piece extra, you have to buy it or you have to do it yourself, but you can add it to the lid and then increase the height of whatever is inside. And then since you have 2 spaces for 1 kilo spool, you can use both to have your big filament roll in there. This is something that is not possible on the Fixdry box. You fit 2 1 kilo filament rolls without any problem, but if you try to have something bigger than that, you are not going to have space either from the side or from the head. Of course, the winner here is the Sunlu S4 because it has space for 4 spools inside, right? And Sunlu also have in their web page something like a hack to increase the capacity by doing some prints that you put on top, and it becomes like a huge box. They even joke saying that you can dry your shoes inside. But there is something that I don't really like about that method or that hack, and it's the fact that you need to permanently cut pieces of the filament box that you just bought. And again, that's something that, I don't know, maybe for me it's just because it's new, but I'm not so willing to go and clap and break my recently bought box just to do that. I don't know, what do you think? Is it okay for you to go and break and cut pieces of what you just bought just to make it bigger? Let me a comment, let me know what you think about it. Still, you have to give it to Sunlu by having 4 filament spaces in the same box. Probably you're gonna be saving some money by hitting all of them at the same time. And it's a clear winner when it comes to capacity that the Sunlu S4 is the best one there is. But remember, not all the time bigger is best. Now that you see that you have space for 4 filament, you also have to see that this machine is huge. And that is going to take a lot of space from your bench, from your workbench. And you have to think and you have to consider this, because in a way, this filament dryer can be bigger than a printer itself. Let's move to the UI of these 3 boxes. This is an area that some people might think that is not that important. In my case, I like to be able to control my things with a user interface that is familiar, that is easy to use. When you look at the Fixdry box, you have a way to control it, and there is nothing fundamentally wrong with it, but it's super simple, right? You have a way to control the temperature, you have a way to control the time that it's working, and basically that's it. When you look at the Eibos and you look at the Sunlu, both of them have more capabilities when it comes to the UI. Starting by the fact that they present you with a name, a preset for each of the filaments that you can dry. So for example, the TPU, it's related to 55 Celsius and ASA some other value, right? But they are presets, so you move between names. In the case of the Fixdry, you have to input the temperature that you want. And again, this is not a big issue, but in my case, I print a lot with TPU. I know that TPU at 55 is a good temperature, but I have no idea from the top of my head what ASA uses to be dry. Which means that if I'm going to dry ASA to do a print, I'm gonna have to go to the internet or somewhere else to figure out what's that value that I need to input on the box before I start drying. Not a big deal, right? But it's gonna take me time. And if you compare it to the Eibos or the Sunlu, where you just cycle between the different names, you're gonna see that it's much more convenient to have those 2 other user interfaces that the Sunlu and the Eibos box has. Both the Sunlu and Eibos have the same functionality. You can change time, you can change the temperature, you can cycle through the different presets. They offer custom, I believe both of them offer 2 custom spaces where you can select the temperature that you want to have there and just have it as your preferred, your favorite, or whatever you want to call it. And both of them have a way to enter this second mode that I've been talking about, where you keep the humidity. Nothing else, nothing very special, but Sunlu wins again here because the screen itself is nicer, it's easier to read, it looks more professional, it looks more like a finished product, if I can say that. Now let's talk about the design of the boxes and compare them. Let me start by talking about what I think is the biggest mistake of the 3 boxes. When you look at the Fixdry, the lid closes very tight. And that means that when I'm gonna open the lid to insert my filament spools inside, I have to do kind of magic to open that box. I have to push and pull at the same time, and I have to use kind of my palm to be able to push it, because there is no handle, there is nothing that is easy to click and lift the lid. It's annoying to open that box, and I'm gonna tell you, that's the main reason why I stopped using that box. In the case of the Eibos, it's actually the opposite. The lid doesn't close too tight, kind of giving it a feeling that it's not very well polished, but it has a handle which make it very easy to open and close whenever you want. Again, the Sunlu S4 is the one winning here because of the way that the lid opens and closes. It makes it very easy just to open the lid, insert your spool inside, and even further, the way that you insert the filament in the box when you are using the top holes is much nicer on the S4 than any of the other ones. When you see the other exit point from the filament boxes, all of them have good things. I would say again, the Fixdry box is the one that you have to go through the lid, even to go behind or to the front. Eibos has thought a little bit more about it, and they have a hole which is under the lid, and makes it very easy. But when you're using the top ones, which is the one that I use most often, the Sunlu S4 is the simplest one to thread that filament through the holes. With the Eibos you can do it, but again you have to fiddle a little bit with the lead and the filament to put it through and grab it on the other side and then feed it to your printer. I mentioned this before, and I think it's, let's say, the most difficult part of the Sunlu S4 is the size and the way that it's designed. When you look at the screen, you are forced to have the box in horizontal, or if you want to call it like that, perpendicular to your printer. This means that the wider side of the Sunlu S4 box, it's going to take a lot of your bench if you want to be able to keep looking at that screen. This makes it a little bit uncomfortable for me when you have it on a bench, right? And even, I'm thinking even those people using like a print farm, you're going to be losing a lot of space behind and in front of the Sunlu box because of the way that they design it in horizontal. I don't know, I don't have any idea if you could put the screen somewhere else to make it nicer and have it on vertical, like on the length of the box. But again, you will have to have a very big place, a very big workshop to have this box next to your printers in that position. The Fixdry and the Eibos, they have very similar shape and they fit very nicely next to your printer. So in that sense, there is no problem with those two boxes. And now let's talk about the price. The Sunlu S4 is priced at $159.99 US on their website. The Eibos is $143.95 on their website, and the Fixdry is only $79.99 US on their page. So you see now there is a big difference between the Fixdry and the other two boxes. The price is very similar between the Eibos and the Sunlu S4, even though Sunlu has 4 spaces while the Eibos has 2. And the prices and the feature difference makes it very difficult to choose between the 3 of them a clear winner. And I think it's much more up to you to see what are the reasons or what is your workflow, how are you working with your filament dryer to be able to choose correctly here. So instead of me telling you which one is my favorite, I'm gonna give you a few questions that you have to keep in your head when thinking about which one fits better your workflow. Let's start with the budget. How much money do you have? Are you willing to go cheap but to lose those small differences, those small features that the other 2 boxes have, so you can choose the Fixdry box? Number 2, do you often work with bigger spool size than 1 kilo? That's an important question, right? Because if you do, the Fixdry is out of the picture and then you just have to choose between the other 2. Number 3, how often do you have to dry 4 spools at the same time? And most importantly, 4 spools of the same filament type. I can imagine that if you are a print farm, which is doing kind of like the same material all the time, this will be perfect for you because you will be saving money by heating the same chamber only one instead of having to have 4 boxes or 2 boxes, each one with 2, right? But if you are a regular person at home which has maybe 1 or maximum 2 printers, how many times are you gonna need to dry 4 spools at the same time? The only moment that I see that happening is when you have a bamboo lab with a AMS, for example, and you need to dry fast 4 spools because you're gonna do a job with 4 new spools that you didn't have dry already. Otherwise, it's difficult for me to see when you're gonna use 4 spools at the same time. And number 4 here is, how much space do you actually have to have your filament dryer? I know a lot of people that is thinking even to go with 1 spool just because they don't have enough space to have their printer and the dryer itself. And as I've been saying, the Sunlu S4 is great, but come on, it's bigger than some printers. It's huge. It takes a lot of space. So depending on how you answer these questions, some parts might be more important than the other, and then you can have the answer to which one works better for you. And if you do, please leave me a comment, tell me which one are you choosing and giving me the reason why you chose it. That's gonna help me in the future when I'm doing reviews like this, and to make sure that I'm taking into consideration what my viewers and other people are doing with the spool dryers. This is what I have for you today. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon.